Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tarnished Bronze, where we pose the question: can we get seven bad Avengers issues in a row? Patrick, what do we have today?
Goal! Um, it's Avengers 304, and it's not even our full team of the Avengers roster. We have this excellent fan favorite roster of the Avengers with Captain America, Thor, Gilgamesh, and Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman, formerly of the Fantastic Four. In this issue, we just have Thor, Captain America, and Gilgamesh. And despite the cover, they're actually in civilian clothes because they're having a special tour of Ellis Island while it's under some renovation.
And yeah, once again, we have politics ingratiating themselves into comic books. Patrick, there's a whole bunch of scaffolding up. They're trying to make a some sort of museum to immigration here, which is fantastic. I'm not sure who has the best ponytail out of all of the Avengers, but I think it should be a policy of admission that you have to have a ponytail. Like I think that needs to be part of the charter. Um, and
You'll
yeah, we've
notice
got
immediately Gilgamesh looks drastically different.
yes,
Uh,
yeah,
Even from the cover. On the cover, he's got that comic book blue black hair,
yeah,
but actually in the comic, they've switched his hair color to sort of a mousy brown, which I actually
yeah.
prefer. I think maybe, I don't know, it's difficult with him.
I didn't really know who that was. Gilgamesh just doesn't live long in the memory for
He
me,
is the forgotten one.
and yeah,
A
and
little.
yeah. So he's forgettable and forgotten. So it's all in the name, everybody. Um, Rick Buckler and Tom Palmer are doing a reasonable job on art. It's not their fault, but this is definitely a fill-in issue following a fill-in, like the Supernova saga. It wasn't super. It wasn't a saga. And then we had yeah. It's just I don't want to belabor the point. It's not the art's problem. I think there's some massive editorial overhauls. And nonetheless, we've got to fill our day up with a comic. And so we get this kind of cool appearance of the Puma, to be quite frank.
Speaking of, yeah, absolutely. Before we get to that, speaking of the art, it's interesting that you said that. And, I wasn't familiar, obviously, with Butler or Palmer. But especially when you look at that previous panel, the seamlessness of the art as they've sort of cycled through artists since Buscema is really remarkable. To me, if you were reading it and not really paying close attention and not, say, an art aficionado, a comic book aficionado, someone who was reading it like I was when I was a kid, which I did not have this issue, I don't think. Um, wasn't really when it was flying off the shelves. I think I filled it in to kind of complete my Avengers run. Um, but to me, it looks very similar to the kind of artwork that we were seeing back in the Roger Stern run. So
Yeah,
the artwork
it's
on Avengers has
seamless.
stayed really seamless. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that has kind of been maybe part of the problem with having the Fantastic Four and all of these different sort of characters in the Avengers is it doesn't have a visual identity. It just has a changing roster and a change in tone, and it wasn't matched at all with some different style of art. Sometimes the art needs to match the tone of the story, otherwise you get this mismatch and anonymity of the issues. And I don't think that suffers here. I think this is just an issue that needs to be over and done with.
Well, and also to build off that point, I think it might be jarring to see. I don't know that this is what was happening, but it might be somewhat jarring to see the Fantastic Four members drawn in the style that we've seen the Avengers drawn in for 100 issues or however long it's been. You know what I mean? It's familiar face, right? I always say right face, wrong place, right? It's like, I saw a friend of ours from back when we used to live in the same town, and I was used to seeing her on the tennis court, and I saw her at a dinner party where you were at, and I went, who is that? I know who that woman is. I know who that woman is, but I do not recognize her at all.
Fairly
So,
certain I'd walk past my spouse in the street because we work in different places. During the work week, I would not even conceive of them being in the street. Does that make
Yeah.
sense,
Oh
Patrick?
yeah, it's happened to me before where I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Plus, if I don't wear my glasses, then I'm hopeless anyway. But yeah, back to your point, I love a cameo from a relatively little known character, and as far as I know, Puma, I mean, an established character. He's a vigilante Native American character who has some dubious reputation. Um, whether it's fair or unfair, I think in this case it probably is fair. I don't think it's just a sort of anti-native, jingoism. But he's an interesting character. He really he does well in his little face-off with the Avengers, and I always love to be introduced to new characters that I might not be exposed to, and he was definitely one.
Yeah, the look is really cool, and the cartooning of the people who are just like seeing him transform really sells it. Like this is a pretty good sequence here. I don't really have much to do with the Puma. I wasn't really sure what the whole bag was, but this comic kind of gets across that he's kind of a Native American sort of police officer or sheriff or some sort of authority figure in that vein, and he's basically chasing this is it Charles Little Sky, who is a tribe member who is maybe undergoing a similar stage of transformation to the Puma, although at a very like more junior level, and so he's obviously having a bit of a crisis with that, and so it just so happens that they're at this Ellis Island thing, and that's why the Avengers are kind of getting embroiled.
In
And
this case,
Charles,
you could say that Puma's the Native American version of X Factor, right?
yeah,
He's chasing down this mutant who refuses to be trained in his powers. His powers are a threat to society, and he's run away from the tribe. And so the tribal council has sent Puma to go retrieve him.
and rather than the scaffolding collapsing, this scaffolding is for reasons that escape me all one unit, and
They
is
have put those joints together tight.
yeah, yeah, that it's very structurally sound, although highly impractical, I imagine. And the amount of man hours that have gone into tightening all those bolts must be just out of this world. Once again, really good sort of cartooning, really good. Like Tom Palmer, the inker here, he's done this for probably the Avengers for probably a decade at this point. Really good at like knowing what you need to focus on in the panel, and knowing what if you get out of the focal plane in the panel, what kind of like little artistry you can pick up on, and you can see the workman here, his hat and cap are just like flying as he tries to dodge out of this toppling Goliath of a scaffold. Really, it's kind of cool stuff.
2 points. One is I do apologize because I forgot that they somehow changed into their garb in the midst of the fight. So they obviously are in their uniforms. I remembered them being in their civilians when I reread it, but I forgot that they somehow changed. Other thing I was gonna ask you, oh, is you know more about this than I do. I almost forgot. Do you think, because you mentioned the inker, do you think that the inking is maybe what helps maintain the seamlessness?
I think so. I think I think that's a big help because the John Buscema stuff looks really different when him or his brother does the inking over himself. I think John Buscema must be like John Byrne, drawing 80 pages of this stuff every month. So he can't do it all himself. So I think Tom Palmer does a lot of the heavy lifting in the Buscema era. And then Buckler has obviously had to just pinch hit because there must be some sort of kerfuffle going on. You and I know that the kerfuffle is John Byrne starts this next week or next month with the guy who Ryan Paul Ryan, who used to also do Fantastic Four. So they're going to be doing a big reshuffle, and this I think had to happen pretty quick. And it might have even been done before the last Supernova Not saga was. It might actually be made before that, to be perfectly honest.
Mm.
Just comes across like that. But not to this is just a competent comic done by competent people who are doing their job to fill a 22-page story that's not too bad. It seems to be pretty straightforward. We've got Charles Little Sky on the run from the Puma. But then what happens, Patrick, is we get these people called the UFOs, which are
Yeah, the now I
not
don't know if you're
UFOs.
aware what what?
They're not UFOs.
Not
They're
UFOs, just the UFOs, but it is a play on words. Yeah, during the scuffle, the young man's powers he sort of emerge, and he's able to open portals. And one of the portals he opens to a place called the Crossroads, which, if you're familiar, was a place that the Hulk was trapped for a while. In some early Defenders comics that I actually have, the Hulk is sort of floating in the crossroads and comes across, I think. Submariner, Silver Surfer, and maybe Doctor Strange find him there and bring him back. So the UFOs have been sort of banished, I guess, to the Crossroads during one of their battles. I did a little reading on the UFOs because, as you know, I've said many times on the channel, I really love a group of supervillains. Now, these aren't necessarily a super competent group of supervillains. They're sort of, or at least maybe not in this issue. I don't know their full publication history. But I did do a little reading, and they have a origin story that's almost identical to the Fantastic Four, even though they are Hulk villains, which I thought was kind of cool. I mean, maybe some people would say that's retread, but why not? Why not? We have
It's
one,
Marvel. Everyone is someone's cousin or boyfriend or
yeah, yeah.
sister's, you
Well,
know.
we can have this sort of cosmic event that creates a superhero group, and then have the same event create a group of villains, you know. So that's and the UFOs are very interesting. I think visually they're interesting. They have interesting powers. So I like them as a villain team. I would have rather have seen them in a actual battle with just the Avengers and not this team of Avengers, with all due
Yeah,
respect. Maybe a different team of Avengers. Um, but in this case, we sort of get a three-way battle with Puma fighting against the Avengers, fighting against the UFOs. And it's not bad, but in terms of some of the battles that we've looked at it, it's not the best.
yeah. I must admit, I do like this costume. Just another point too. I think Thor can make his costume disappear, but where do those Captain America pirate boots go when he's in his civilian clothing? Like, where did they come from?
The cuffs really go, they're very smooth, and he wears really high tube socks that go
Okay,
over. It's the material, it's all in the material. Also, what a pain in the ass this is. That Vector is, which one is the one, or is Vector in the middle? I can't remember their names. Did I
a
write them
vector
down?
looks like the line one in the middle, but
Okay,
this
what's the one on the
costume would
left?
just be a massive pain in the ass to draw.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Like, they're just like, oh, kill me. Like, why is he? Does he have to be in
Um,
the?
So you may notice that we do a lot of episodes on the channel, and if John Romita Jr. is designing this, there's no way we're going to spend more time on expressions and action than in drawing all these stupid suns everywhere. So yeah, not a Romita Jr. costume.
Oh, it makes you wonder too. Yeah, I wonder who now. Which one? We said no. She's Vapor. They say
Yeah,
all their names. X-Ray. X-Ray is the one
yeah.
with the lines. It is Vector. I was
Okay.
right. Oh, I think now we have to re-subtitle the channel, not the channel where Patrick's always wrong. In this
Yeah,
instance,
yeah.
okay. So
Well,
anyway, yeah,
I am
Vector is
pleased.
probably
I am pleased that you're saving the corrections for this really important issue of the Avengers,
no,
Patrick. And not
no, because I think I want to look up after the episode who was the artist that created Vector, because whoever did it, he's probably not on people's like Christmas list.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely not Rick Buckler and Tom
Tom
Palmer's
Palmer,
Christmas
yeah,
list. Yeah. But this is a great panel. That's why I chose again. And some good action happens in
it
this
does.
sequence. Puma and the UFOs are good enough to give us like 10 pages of action in this story. You know, just kind of milks it pretty well, to be honest. And some cool shots like this Captain America falling backwards, the Puma doing Puma stuff, like he's kind of living up to his name. I do like
Mm.
the cool teeth as well. Um, you know,
I don't love the monochromatic kind of orange look. He looks like
everyone's
so many
orange
other,
though. Yeah,
huh?
it's hard.
Oh, is he
Everyone's.
is that what color he is? Because I am colorblind.
Yeah, so Vector is orange, Puma is orange. It seems
Yeah.
like the hair of the Vapor is orange. Like it just there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, I mean, and they couldn't help that, but I just feel like, I mean, it's probably a lot easier to color him just all one color, but Puma might look a little more interesting if he had a little bit of variation in his coloring. But yeah, I like the character. And like I said, he was doing fine against the Avengers. I mean, it's sort of a Spider-Man versus the X-Men in Secret Wars kind of scenario. He wasn't going to take them down, but they also weren't able to just sort of handle him. So I like the writing in that way. And again, I think the UFOs are very interesting. They have a very interesting power set. So when in doubt,
Um,
throw guest stars at it, but not guest stars from the Fantastic Four. Like, give us some interesting people that we don't normally see. Ironclad looks great. Very much reminds me of the awesome android that you
yeah,
love so much, the big putty head.
yeah. So it takes us, 45 minutes to just do the costume of Vector. It takes us 45 seconds to do
Vapor.
the
Oh, or Vapor too, right? You can just draw a little tail of mist. You're like, that's
yeah,
Vapor.
yeah, it's all good stuff. But Charles Little Sky does have his moment in the sunshine at the end here, which I really liked. A kind of full circle of stuff goes on, but he really doesn't want any. Once he gets rid of the UFOs, he really doesn't want to have anything to do with Puma, anything to do with the material world as we know it, and he busts through into the crossroads, right? And
Yeah.
is he going to meet Robert Johnson and the Devil and get real good at the blues, or is he going to team up with Darkhawk and become like an early '90s sort of um, person of note? You know,
Or or will he run into Bone Thugs and Harmony
okay, yeah.
and like be missing his homies and like pour out some of his 40, you know?
Or better yet, he's going to do all of the above and become a music and superhero prodigy. So
Yeah.
Charles Little Sky has that all ahead of him for now.
So I have a question for you. You're usually
Yeah,
asking the questions, but this time I have a question for you. I'm sure it was probably on your list of things to ask. But what did you think about the philosophical question of the issue, really, was but aside from the political stuff with the immigration at the beginning, which we can get to as well, but was who has jurisdiction over this Native American? Now, in the United States, typically tribal law does outrank. It's one of the few sort of amenities afforded to Native Americans in this country is that tribal law often can sort of overrule local law, right? So in that way, it does seem like Puma should be able to go. But then at the same time, if this boy doesn't want to be a part of the tribe, then doesn't he have a right to like, free himself from that jurisdiction? So I thought it was kind of an interesting question for a filler issue,
yeah,
They don't
yeah.
really explore it too much, but
Just like Crossfire with I think Norman Mailer and William F. Buckley Jr., we don't avoid the tough questions on time
yeah.
things. And this is we don't avoid the hot button issues. Social media would probably blow up at this. But yeah, I think the jurisdiction question is pretty tough because all are equal before the law, right? That's one of the foundations of common law. And just to reiterate, it's the rule of law, not the rule by law. And
Mm.
so I think if one voluntarily submits to tribal law, then that is okay. Like whereas I think that is the way that is actually done. One must register as a member of
Mm.
an official
Mm.
tribe
A
and so
member
on
of
and
a
so
tribe.
forth.
Yes, absolutely.
But then the other thing is one must also choose to for better or worse, kind of like be subordinate to that rule. So I think Charles Littlesky or someone of that ilk can kind of you can. It's not. It's kind of like Rumspringa for the Amish. You can leave. I don't think you're
Yeah.
necessarily obliged to just to stay. I'm
Because
not.
as a
I'm not.
human, you
I'm
also we sort of have that idea of freedom of movement, right? So he should be able to move out of that if he like, not that the tribe is a cult, but like as if you were leaving a cult.
so yeah, and I think too. Yeah,
Again, not that the
that's
tribe is a cult. I'm just
that's
saying.
pretty common for a lot of First Nations people, a lot of Indigenous people. There are realms in which realms in which original and traditional owners can exhibit some legal authority, and I think that is totally separate to individualized laws where groups that are totally unrelated to First Nations people decide that they want to have a parallel legal system. So I don't think that this is necessarily a parallel jurisdiction. This is a jurisdiction that one chooses to go into. It's
Mm.
not related to your religion or your birth or whatever. It's related to whether you're a part of the First Nations people. So I think we've covered all of the issues that we need to cover, Patrick, as far as hot button issues. Let's get our different evaluation hats on and go. Is this better than the last bunch of Avengers issues 301 to 303? I'd say
Oh,
yes.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to raise you and say that it's better than the Avengers 299 to 300.
Well, then we need to reevaluate where 299 300 sits, because I'm going to say right now that Ambush Bug strives for something and fails. Okay? Ambush Bug strives for something and fails. This sits above 301 to 303 because it's a filler issue, but it has merit. It's one issue. And I think we could move 299 300 down in future. Um,
Okay.
and the reason it sits below Ambush Bug 1 to 4 and the Kite Man Batman is the Kite Man Batman had Selena Kyle with it had some great moments. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, this is a competent comic made by competent people in which nothing happens.
I'm a sucker for guest stars. And I mean, you've got Puma, you've got the UFOs. I would put it above Batman 315. I really didn't like the Inferno issues. I mean, I don't really feel like much happened there either. So, yeah, maybe we can reevaluate that. Gosh, and the ambush bug really I found so tedious.
Oh no! So this does exactly what it sets out to do on the 10. It is an issue of the Avengers, but it is beholden to just filling 22 pages up. So I can go with you and say like it's probably a better crafted comic than Batman 315. I can put it below Invasion 3 because Invasion 3 has like Invasion 3 has some astonishing that black and white art is absolutely like out of this world.
And it's got a
Um,
cast of thousands.
and it so Inferno and the Ambush Bug in my mind were reaching for something and they didn't quite grasp it. This is not reaching for anything. It's just filling someone's month up with their comic. But I am happy to say that no matter how meme worthy Batman 315 is, this is probably a better comic, Patrick. So we'll probably settle just north of 315 and just south of Invasion 3.
I think that's fair. And Invasion 3 also had that nice little vignette where Martian Manhunter helped them infiltrate the Dominion homeworld, which was kind of cool. So, yeah, yeah, no, I think that's fair.
And if these callbacks sound at all interesting, you can delve into the back catalogue of Tarnished Bronze. Patrick and I will be here very shortly for a new episode, and you can like, follow, and subscribe below. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments.